Welcome to Just the Guys Podcast.
What's up, guys? It is Saturday, August the 23rd, and we are live with Just the Guys. Remember, this is the Bring Back Shame headquarters. Tonight is just me and Soldiers of Finance. The rest of everyone else is out with the Do Funny flu. I think they're somewhere down with Abigail Spanberger trying to save her campaign after this sign that went out this week against Winsome Sears. But we are going to open it up to you guys if you want to join in the conversation tonight. There's the link. We're going to post it in the chat here as well. But we're live tonight, guys, and we have a great show lined up for you because this has been an interesting week today. And if you haven't already, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and share this video. This is going to be one that you want to bookmark and share for in the future. You saw the headline: Blacks need to apologize to Trump. And did you were you a fan of South Park? Did you ever watch South Park?
Yeah, no, I like South Park. Yeah,
You did? Okay. Were you familiar with that episode where Randy went on Wheel of Fortune and the word that came up, it was in space, GGERS.
right. Yeah, I love South Park.
I thought that was so funny. But in the end, like he was trying to, he was trying to apologize to Black people for that. So they had, Jesse Jackson as the, I guess, arbiter of Black people.
Sure.
So Randy Marsh went to go kiss the butt of Jesse Jackson to apologize for saying the N-word on national TV. But I think that same kind of take right now needs to happen from Blacks to Trump because of what's going on, especially the things that we saw this week. With the sign kind of protesting against Winsome Sears. I'm not sure if you guys have seen that, but if you haven't, here it is. Let me put it up here on the screen. This was the sign that was shown at a Winsome Sears protest. Hey, Winsome, if trans can't share your bathroom, then Blacks can't share my water fountain. So when you saw that, Soldiers, what did you think, man?
Well, let me say this before I address that. The other side of the sign is visible. It's just backwards.
Yep.
And it says, I'm not going to quote it exactly, but it says something to the effect of, "Hey, Winsome Sears, you have a what is the term for gender neutral bathroom in your house." Okay. That the sign that she's showing now says that, right?
Yep.
And my immediate thought when I interpreted that was, but I don't have transgenders in my house. Okay. That's the crux of the issue here. I don't have people pretending to be another gender in my house. Okay. Yep. And everyone in this house, I don't know about this woman, but everyone in my house, we know each other. Okay. We have a relationship. Also, the bathrooms in my house are equipped for one person at a time. All right. Not like a public restroom. Okay. So it's just more liberal logic. In terms of the other side, the side that we're seeing now, it's typical to see liberals try to co-opt aspects of the civil rights struggle out of the 50s and 60s, and graft it onto whatever it is they want to do in the 21st century. Okay.
Well, that's kind of the point, though, right? Because I actually want to, what you just said right there, we are actually going to kind of dig deeper into that, because today is going to be a bit of a history lesson, because that was kind of the playbook by the communists, right? To have this perpetual cycle of divisiveness, this perpetual cycle of pitting one against the other. And that's why kind of these new movements cling to the civil rights era, because the civil rights is like, oh, it was black versus white, right? It's a racial issue, right? So then, because that's the easiest thing, for the mind to see, related to everything that's, trying to make this oppressed oppressor type relationship, is going to cling to that civil rights movement. But we're going to get into that a little bit further. But the other question right here, was she just trolling, right? Was this someone that just showed up to, because this was a Winsome Sears event, someone that showed up to the event and then, held the sign? Do liberals really think like this is the big question.
Liberals do really think like that. But could it have been a savvy kind of reverse psychology of it? Maybe this woman is a rock rib conservative. I don't know, right? But I do think that this is authentically a liberal, because this is, now she's got white hair, so she's probably retired, right? You can't cancel her, right? But this can be taken as an inflammatory statement that could result in the loss of income, So yes. I think that this is an authentic liberal statement. I mean, it's really not surprising, right? Because the Democrats, this is what they were doing. They were the ones that were saying, hey, no, we don't want integration. Okay, we like this separate apartheid system we have. And a lot of people will say, oh, no, but there was this great switch. No, there was not. There were two congressional Democrats, rather. Two congressional Democrats that switched to Republican. Strom Thurmond, and I can never remember that second guy's name because he was that irrelevant, okay? They were the only two that switched. Every other bigoted Democrat, like Al Gore Sr., who helped in the filibuster of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, every last one of the other ones remained Democrat. Okay, Robert Byrd remained Democrat. Yep. Joe Biden, who fought to resegregate the school system, Democrat. So there was no great switch. This is them. This is how they think. These are the same people who decided to sacrifice thousands upon thousands of lives to fight to maintain slavery. That was the South's position.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So Kung Fu, man, welcome aboard tonight. You hanging out with us. Remember the other guys have the Do Funny flu, and we have right here on the screen a Do Funny advocate, allegedly. But the question right now, Kung Fu, I do want to ask is, was she trolling with this sign?
Yes, she was. I'm looking at the sign, and you have a sign up about a woman who's running for governor. And the bathroom in schools, and blacks can't, share my water. She definitely trolled. And the reason why I say this is we haven't had whites only water fountains for 50 years, 55 years, which means she's probably actually a racist today.
Well, it's fine, but hold on. The question though, right? Is this someone that was just kind of paid to show up, to hold this sign, to make, it could be a clever ploy to get people talking, right? Or do you think this was a genuine sign?
I'm believing it's a genuine sign. She's in Virginia, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm believing it's a genuine sign. Why? Because Virginia was the headquarters when it came down to slavery. It was the headquarters.
It was the Confederate capital.
That's right.
Yeah, you are correct. Now, I want to go ahead and play this ad because the Winsome Sears campaign came out this really quick, though. But I want to play this ad because Lieutenant Governor Sears, who's running for the governor of Virginia, has been, I guess, a proponent of what's called common sense solutions. And one of the hot button issues out in Loudoun County and some of the other counties in Virginia has been men in women's sports. So from a governor's perspective, this is one of the issues that she wants to tackle. So that's, kind of the reason why you're seeing this sign and you're kind of relating it. But I'm going to play this ad here.
I reached out to Democratic gubernatorial candidate Abigail Spanberger's campaign yet again on the locker room issue.
So far, she's not responded.
Her campaign wouldn't give an answer.
She has refused to comment. She still hasn't responded.
And she can't even speak out about an 80-20 issue.
Abigail Spanberger, nothing.
This sign that reads, "Hey Winsome, if trans can't share your bathroom, then blacks can't share my water fountain," has gotten a lot of attention online.
I'm elected to represent everyone, even those who hate me. I am there trying to protect everyone's children, Democrats' children, Independents' children, Republican children, they're all children.
Abigail Spanberger's statement is non-existent.
In Loudoun County, they have punished several young men who were filmed surreptitiously by a trans-identifying young woman who was in their locker room.
We still have not heard where Abigail Spanberger stands.
It's pretty incredible that that's not an easy question to answer. And Winsome Sears has gotten on the press conference circuit.
It is time for the insanity to stop. It is settled that boys are boys and girls are girls. And for generations, we've understood this. That's not discrimination. It is common sense.
If you look at her record, she is no different than Nancy Pelosi, AOC.
Spanberger also voted in favor of allowing biological males to compete in women's sports.
You're hiding? You cannot be cowardly on this issue.
She is for nonsense and I am for common sense.
All right, so that was the ad that they came up with as a result. Now, they may have been working on that for a while. But I will say this, man. I think this was a real genuine sign, right? And I'm gonna tell you why. I saw a comment on the YouTube page last week saying, you guys are sitting behind the screen. You should be out there and talk and doing stuff in your community. I was like, man, you haven't been here long. You don't know me, right? So I say that to say, I ran for office in Baltimore City in 2020. I ran for city council president, which is pretty much the president of the legislative branch of city government in Baltimore City. And when I was running, I was out one day, just door knocking and campaigning, and there was a house that wasn't necessarily on my walk list, but the person was out and about. So, I'm out. So I'm going to speak and say hi. I think that's just the right thing to do. This lady in her yard, she had Black Lives Matter signs. She had, pro-black signs, whatever. There's a white lady. And I just, come up and speak to her, talk about some of the issues. And my opening line at the time was, if you don't want too much power to be in one bedroom, then I'm the option to prevent that from happening. And at the time, Marilyn Mosby was the state's attorney, and I was running against Nick Mosby, who then became city council president. But in a lot of those things that she agreed with, well, too much power shouldn't be in one bedroom, what have you. But then, I said, I am, the Republican candidate for city council president, and then she just went off. Right? At that point, she went off. Right? You don't know what it's like to be black in America. You don't know what it's like to be black. How could you do that? How could you be a Republican? I'm like, ma'am, are you talking? Is there someone else standing next to me? Like, do you not see me? I'm black, right? I mean, and then it was funny. I wrote an op-ed for Baltimore City for the Baltimore Sun. It got published back in December. But I'll post that op-ed that I wrote in the show notes a little bit later. But I also did a radio interview on WYPR where the midday host asked me similar questions. And I just thought it was interesting. I thought it was fascinating because white liberals feel like they do control Black thought, right? Can control the Black experience, right? And then it's like the most racist thing. How is it that a white woman right here that I'm standing across from telling my story can tell me better than I can what my story is? I got a Black wife.
It's
got Black parents, got Black kids. How can you tell me?
It's a form of Stockholm syndrome. And for those who absolutely must know, I ran into burning buildings and rode the medic unit for 10 years. And I did not get paid for that. I was a volunteer. So that's it. If you must know what I chose to do for my community, it was that. There's a comment here from The American. This kind of illustrates the whole Stockholm syndrome thing that I was speaking of. He says, white guy gets jumped. Then Trump sends federal forces to DC and posts pictures of only Black people they've arrested on the White House website. How is that not racism? Are you familiar, The American, with Sean Charles Dunn? He was all over the news last week for assaulting a federal agent with a subway BMT. And last time I checked, Sean Charles Dunn was not Black. Further, let me ask you a sincere question, The American. Who do you care more about in terms of their welfare? The hardworking, law-abiding citizens of the city of DC, or those people that are out there carjacking, robbing, raping, okay, causing all this havoc? Because I can tell you, I don't give a damn what your skin color is. I don't care about those people. I care about people who are productive citizens. And in Washington, D.C., the majority of the vast and overwhelming majority of people that are Black in that city are hardworking, law-abiding citizens. That's what society is for them, not for us to take pity on criminals. If you don't want to get locked up, if you don't want to run afoul of the cops, well, then don't do crime. It's as simple as that. And if you are about to suggest that Black people can't comprehend that and can't abide by that, then you might have some racist tendencies.
So I want to go because on top of what that protester had, or the Do Funny advocate at the Winsome Sears rally, that sign that she was holding up. On top of that, this week, Trump has announced that he is sending his team of attorneys in to look at what's going on with the Smithsonian museums. And he's declared woke is broke, and to look at the messages being presented in the museums. Now, Trump is the biggest troll, but he also has the receipts. So on whitehouse.gov, they did publish this site. President Trump is right about the Smithsonian, and it actually goes through and lists some of the things in the exhibits that were anti-American, and it really presents a destructive view of this country. Now, the people complaining the most, right, are Black people saying slavery is being erased, or the history and legacy of slavery is being erased. You have the inclusive Do Funny advocates again saying that they're reshaping or redeclaring the narrative of America and ignoring America's past. When that's just not true at all, right? That's not true. And it's just one of the things, one of the images that the that was in the National Museum of African American Heritage and Culture was this assumption of whiteness. Like, I don't know if you guys remember that whole graphic that they had, and it's on the whitehouse.gov website, but being on time is white. Showing up on time is an element of white culture. Are you telling me black people can't show up on time, or it's racist to show up on time?
They also allege that math and proficiency in it is indicative of white. Now think about what math is, right? It's like universal, cosmic. It has existed since the beginning of time, just out there. But you've got liberal college professors saying that a mastery of it is indicative of some type of racial bias.
Mm-hmm. Kung Fu is showing up on time white? Is hard work and work ethic white? Are black people incapable because because it's an element of whiteness? Should black people not be expected to work hard?
That's not white or black. I grew up in a family and I watched them go to work. I watched my father get up at 3 o'clock in the morning so he can make it to Martin Luther King Library in downtown DC to get to work on time. When I joined the military, being at quarters at 7:30 or 7 o'clock, Tyrone knows I did that. I hate being late to anything. But the thing is that being on time all the time, and the moment you are late, now your boss or whoever is concerned about your well-being. He ain't never late. What's going on? And people don't look at that. When you always late and you leave a job, now you need a reference. That's the first thing the person that's gonna be telling your new boss, she ain't never on time.
Yeah.
She always late.
Yeah.
Because those things point to character. It points to consistency. It points to he really wants to work. I think this guy, even if he doesn't know that much, he's on time. I'll work with him. I can work with him because he's eager to learn.
So I want you guys to think that in the audience, I want you guys to think of this in the element of sowing seeds of division, right? Because ultimately, right, that is what this is another seed of division that as it gets planted, it grows into a tree or what have you. What it grows into, it becomes harder and harder to uproot, right? And what we saw what we're seeing, and I encourage everyone to go to whitehouse.gov, go through all the exhibits that they have, kind of laid out on the website, and really examine and really ask yourself, is this the United States, or is this unifying us as a country, or is this sowing another seed to divide us as a country, right? And I want you really to think about this too, because who has interest in dividing the country? What entity, what power, what have you, has interest in consistently dividing the country? And again, today we're going to go into a little bit of history lesson in a moment, because it's clear when you start to look at these things, and this was really what helped me on my conservative journey. When you start to look at these things through the lens of history, it becomes overwhelmingly clear to me what we're fighting against, right? And again, I think when you start to see the true attitudes of these people, one, her holding up the sign, and two, what's going on with the history and what's being preached and portrayed constantly, you start to see, man, this was a plot all along, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I want to go ahead and get you prepared, right? Because as you start to go through this stuff, you're going to be called names. But Tyrone had mentioned earlier about what happens when you start to read, and I don't know if we were behind the stage. I don't know if we start the show yet or not. But we talking about Uncle Tom. Tom. We were talking about Uncle Tom, right? Now, as a black person, black man, you've been called Uncle Tom. Kung Fu, have you gotten that name yet?
Not anymore, especially when I tell them you don't know the story.
Okay.
Exactly. Yep.
Once I tell them the story, they're like, "You're a Sambo."
Right.
Okay.
Oh, they switch it up.
Yeah, that's not me either. Sambo is the one that told on the ones who escaped from slavery.
Yep. So I want to play, because this video is a very powerful video from a gentleman on YouTube, and I'm blanking on his name right now, but I think it's like Kez something. It's Kez something. I'm gonna have to look it up in a second. But I have a bonus for you guys today. Like, I am going to share this presentation. It's actually this presentation that's in the show notes. If you haven't checked the description out already, towards the bottom of the description, I do have a link to this presentation. It's a Canva presentation, so you can go through it and get to the original sources, get to the videos and everything that I shared here. But so I want to play this video because this is a gentleman that was on that journey, and he after being called Uncle Tom, he read the book. So I'm gonna play this.
That's when some black people called me after I told the uncomfortable truth. White people didn't invent slavery. Well, I've been reading the book. And you know what's ironic? Uncle Tom is the hero. Uncle Tom's Cabin was published in 1852 by Harriet Beecher Stowe. Stowe wrote it after the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, which legally required citizens to help capture freed slaves, was passed. The book had a clear anti-slavery message and depicted the evils of slavery, and it was a viral hit.
I don't know what's going on with my internet. You guys still there?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm here.
Man, come on, Canva. You're making me look bad. All right, hold on. Let me go back.
I reached out to Democratic
Uncle Tom. That's when some black people called me after I told the uncomfortable truth. White people didn't invent slavery. Well,
sorry,
I've been reading the book. And you know what's ironic? Uncle Tom is the hero. Uncle Tom's Cabin was published in 1852 by Harriet Beecher Stowe. Stowe wrote it after the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, which legally required citizens to help capture freed slaves, was passed. The book had a clear anti-slavery message and depicted the evils of slavery, and it was a viral hit. It sold over 300,000 copies in its first year. It was the best-selling novel of the 19th century and second only to the Bible. Frederick Douglass and Booker T. Washington praised the book as one of the best things that happened for the cause of African-American people. It massively galvanized the abolitionist movement in the North. So much so that Abraham Lincoln supposedly called Harriet Beecher Stowe the little lady who started the Civil War. Uncle Tom was a religious man who maintained his morality despite injustice. He was a martyr who was tortured to death for refusing to betray two women who escaped. He was the epitome of nonviolent resistance, a Christ-like figure who refused to hate his white slave masters even though they hated him, because he knew that hatred hurts both the hater and the hated. He was not a coward. He was not a traitor. He was a hero. So how did Uncle Tom get twisted from hero to villain? Propaganda by white supremacists. After the Civil War, white supremacists needed to discredit the book that helped end slavery. So they put on blackface in minstrel shows and twisted Uncle Tom from defiance into subservience. they desecrated his image. And 100 years later, Black leaders took that bastardized image and used it against their own. Malcolm X called Martin Luther King and Uncle Tom for refusing to choose violence. Look, I'm not a victim here. I don't like name calling for people who look like me, but if I wanted to stop, I can just put down the mic. But I do want to reflect this to those saying it. When you call me an Uncle Tom, you are using the slurs of your forefathers' oppressors. You're using the exact words that racists use to divide. And I see this insult used every time a Black person in America has the bravery to stand up and say, no, I refuse to view Black people as victims kept down by the white man in 2025. No, I refuse to perpetuate the pendulum swing of hatred by viewing white people as a...
Yeah, stupid thing.
Look,
All right.
this is just like you also hear a lot of young liberals attack Christianity as that European religion.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, it's Jesus of Nazareth, not Jesus of Glasgow, Scotland. I mean, I mean, none of this story took place in Europe, right? But it's just like an extreme amount of ignorance that you can tell no one's picking up a book, okay,
right,
to really enlighten themselves, you know.
But go ahead, Kofu.
Before I left the Department of Corrections, I was in special operations, and one of the guys, we was on a mission, and he just said, "What country is Israel?" And me, reader of the Bible, studied the Bible since I was 12 years old. I'm thinking it's in Africa. He's like, no, it's in Asia.
Oh, continent, yeah.
And I'm looking, I'm like, hold on. My Bible has maps in the back. I go to the map. Asia Minor, Asia. That means, and then I'm looking at all of the places around Israel. That means Jesus is an Arab. He's not from Africa. He's not fully from Asia, but he's an Arab based on the area that his country and all other countries did, like Babylon, Syria, and those countries. So when he told me that, and I'm thinking of this is like 8 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, how did I not know this? I've been looking at the Bible all these years, never knew this. But then you got people saying, well, that's the white man's religion. I'm thinking to myself, well, wait a minute. Mark evangelized in Africa. Paul evangelized in Africa. The Bible was evangelized in Africa before it even got to Europe, Africa, and Asia, because it was proselytized in Turkey, Pakistan, Afghanistan. The Bible before it got to Europe was already in these countries. Mm-hmm. And you have the Ethiopians.
Exactly. Yep.
They have the Bible, but they have a lot of the books that weren't put in the 66.
Yep.
Or the Catholics, 66 plus the Apocrypha, which is like 5 books. And those 5 books deify Mary. And so when I'm listening to them and I'm like, you just don't get it. I'm showing them videos where Africans are saying the Bible was in Africa first.
Yeah. Well, the point is, right, this is for people that are looking, though, right? Our goal is to bring back shame.
Right.
And also, we are also building a community of, like-minded people. But it's for those that are seeking, right? And that's why we do these shows and share this information and all that, is because there are people out here still searching, or there are people that, hey, I want a piece of information to share. Because I was thinking about my conservative journey, and what I've been warning people about, and how I got to my, the way I think now. And it was a process, but it was a process of looking through, certain pieces of information, looking through original documents, and looking through, what history was. Tyrone, you had mentioned earlier about the party switching, right?
Mhm.
Everyone's heard that, right? And at the end of his video, he said propaganda. The party switching is another one of those pieces of propaganda, right? When you think about, I think about Baltimore City, right? Baltimore City, for example, has been voting Democrat for the past, let's just conservatively, the past 125 years, right? Out of that past 125 years, there have been 19 years where a Republican was elected, right? Since 1900, Baltimore City has been voting predominantly Democrat, right? The last Republican left office, what was it, 1967, Tyrone? I think it was 1967.
I think you're right. Yep.
Last Republican left was 1967. All right. Around the same time, the population of Baltimore started to decline, right? You can go back and look this up. That's also the time where they say the party switched. Right.
Yeah.
So Baltimore has had a history the past 125 years of consistently voting Democrat. So my just thought process, at some point, if there was really a switch in the parties, wouldn't we see kind of a difference even in local elections, or some type of shift, right? It may not be a massive shift or massive change, but you have a history of voting Democrat, and then you continue to vote Democrat up until 2025. Has there been, what shifted?
Right.
That's a question that I have. All right. And then when you look at, again, the lady with the sign, which she's holding up, the I won't let you have access to my bathroom. It's people like Wes Moore and Brandon Scott. It's her type of person that's electing people like Brandon Scott in Baltimore City as mayor, and Wes Moore as the governor of Maryland, right? Because these people, with their progressive liberal mindset, again, believe they know better. And because there are Blacks with an attitude of, hey, I want to lead the Black community, or Blacks have these kind of phrase markers. I'm going to show you this, guys. I'm going to show you this stuff in a minute. But they have this attitude of, I'm in charge of an organization, or I'm leading this community of people, and they want that power for themselves. They will go right along with this progressive liberal mindset, all the while destroying their own communities. Before I show the proof right here, I want to go back, because there's a couple of things I do want to show. Again, this is all original source material. Has anyone seen this image before?
Yes, I have.
I have seen that.
This was from the October 21st, 1876 publication of Harper's Weekly. And in this image, they are, it's a Black man at the voting booth. And the graphic says, let me get to the next screen here. It says, of course he wants to vote for the Democrat ticket. I'm gonna read the phrase. I'm gonna read this whole thing. The Negroes of the South are free as air, says the parliamentarian Watterson. This is what the state, a well-known Democrat organ of Tennessee, says in huge capital letters on the subject. Let it be known before the election that the farmers have agreed to spot every leading radical Negro in the county and to treat him as an enemy for all time to come. The rotten ring must and shall be broken at any and all costs. The Democrats have determined to withdraw all employment from their enemies. Let this fact be known. So in the 1800s, early 1900s, the mechanism used to maintain the black vote was fear.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, so Kofu.
No, and it still is. Go ahead, Kung Fu.
Yeah. It basically in the South, because most of your Democratic, most of your Republican branches that were created in the South were created by Black people.
Mm-hmm.
And so people don't know that Black people voted Republican at a 99% clip. Why? Was because they know the Republicans had no ill will towards them. And so when you showed that picture, that just brought back Thomas Sowell. It's in his book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I want you to think about this, right? Right. At first, blacks were not voting Democrat, but they were trying to get blacks to vote for Democrats, right? And again, the mechanism used was straight fear, and like it's crazy to me because once you realize you didn't need fear or chains, but social programming, it's like the light bulb went off on them. Said, let's get them voting for the Democrat. And now today, black people vote 90 in the last election, 92%. Well, that was black females, but 90% of black people vote for Democrats.
Right.
If you line up a group of or just have a room of black folk and you say, hey, pick out a Democrat voter, there's a 90% chance that on your first pick, you're going to pick out a Democrat voter. Right. So now this stuff isn't hidden, right? But you do have to search for it. Right. And again, I'm going to the link to this little presentation is in the show notes, and it links to the original source material. So if you click on this Harper's Weekly link down at the bottom, it actually goes to the Harper's Weekly page on the internet. This is the archive, but some of them is Library of Congress, some of it's Internet Archive. So I'm using materials from original sources, right? Which is it's not hidden, but if you open a book, open it up, you can read it. But I think it's go ahead.
This is how the Republicans, I always say, the Republican Party was founded for the sole purpose of ending slavery. Okay. And I always say, once they did that, they have not known what the hell to do ever since. Okay. They haven't been able to articulate a very clear message since then. And the message is very simple. It's what it always was. It's freedom. Okay. Now it's economic freedom. All right. Yep. While the Democrats want to keep you on all these social programs, while the Democrats they'll fight like hell for a minimum wage. You have never heard a Democrat say a damn thing about a maximum wage or maximizing your wage. Okay. They want to keep you in this box so that you will be perpetually and generationally dependent on a political party. Reince Priebus, back during the Obama administration, Reince Priebus was the head of the Republican National Committee. And he came out with a 100-point plan to attract minorities. And I'm like, no. Yeah. Coca-Cola doesn't have 100 reasons why you should buy it. They have one. It's refreshing. Okay. Okay.
That's it.
You got to condense it down to freedom. Yeah, it's a different kind of freedom. And one last thing. This is a big piece of history to prove that the Republicans had the best interest of blacks at heart. Hiram Revels, okay, 1870. This man became the first United States senator and then went on to become the first, was he secretary? I believe Secretary of State for the state of Mississippi. Okay, and it's a black man. All right. So this is the type of history that liberal Marxists want to keep obscured. and walled off because people will start to ask questions and be enlightened that this whole thing is a farce, man. They got you believing you're a victim, okay? And Giovanni, we were talking about this before we got into the show. The book, I always recommend this book, Black Fortunes.
Mm-hmm.
It chronicles the first 6 Black millionaires, all of whom were slaves.
Wow. There's something about that slave work ethic. That's a terrible joke, but
look, I wanted to add to what Tyrone was saying is that there were a lot of lives lost for even trying to rescue slaves. The church I grew up in was a part of the Underground Railroad, 1848. Second Baptist Church in Washington, D.C. They have a plaque outside the building. It's a part of the Underground Railroad tour of how they helped. There were blacks chasing escaped slaves to bring them back.
Wow.
They were paid too at that. They were paid.
They do that now. This is the Wes Moores of the world. This is the Al Sharptons of the world. This is the Jesse Jacksons of the world, who at this point, like I said, need to apologize to Trump. But that's what they're doing right now, right? The escape. They're after us. How do we target black men that have voted Republican? How do we go after those black men? Right? That's that they're being paid to go after. And this lady, Abigail Spanberger, who's the lady that was holding up that Jim Crow-esque sign, is allegedly a door knocker for the Abigail Spanberger campaign.
Wow.
Wes Moore, the Republican, the Wes Moore, the governor of Maryland, is good friends with Abigail Spanberger. Abigail Spanberger has invited Wes Moore to help her campaign, and he's been there. They have plenty of photos taken together where Wes Moore is very supportive of the Spanberger movement, right? So it's those type of people that are promoting the liberal progressive agenda that's harmful to the black community, right? They're being promoted by these communist Marxists, right? It's clear as day, right? So one more thing I want to play on this kind of this whole forced to vote Democrat. And this, have you guys seen Free State of Jones?
I heard about it.
Oh man, Matthew McConaughey, man, this is a great movie. Again, this stuff isn't hidden, right? This they want to push a narrative, and this is why what Trump is doing with the Smithsonian is so important, right? Because America is a great country. We've overcome a lot. We overcame a lot, and to where we are today is a miracle. From the innovation to the collaboration of people, to just what we're able, the freedom that we have. So to kind of push that narrative of slavery was the only thing in America's history is detrimental to everyone, right? So what he's doing with and bringing back true American history is a good thing, not this falsified history that the liberal progressive want to promote because it's divisive. The only way to divide our country is from within. So I want to play this, and they won't show this part, right? They won't show this element of history, which is this part from Free State of Jones. Now I'm risking copyright for this. So.
Oh, shoot.
Man, this thing. Let's try it again. All right. Why does I want to play this?
That's the devil, bro. That's the devil. That's how he works.
JT Thompson earlier said you got Tyrone Stan internet service.
I do, man. Hold on. Let me. I gotta play this. But hold on. Let me get this, man. Because I gotta play this. I'm gonna refresh my Canva session here. And hold on. Present. Let's see if it works this time.
We like Republican tickets. We ain't got those yet. Just the Democrat tickets. We'll wait. Might be a pretty long wait. Let me explain something to you. These men here to vote. And they mind dying a whole lot less than you do. Let's see if I can find any.
All right, so the clip goes on to show that, I mean, I wish that part of the clip would play, but all of them voted for the Republican, and they tallied up the results at the end, and it showed that the Republican only had 2 votes.
Okay. Yeah. You know, something else in that clip, it was subtle.
Yes, right.
Also, the reason why they don't like the Second Amendment. Okay, especially in the you know, look at what and look. We got to be totally honest here, right? It was Reagan, as governor of California, that got pissed off that the Black Panthers were abiding by the law of California at the time that allowed citizens to carry rifles. Okay?
That's right.
Streets of California. And they quickly quashed that with the help, by the way, of the NRA. Okay. So there's that little piece in there also, because they being the Democrats, became very aware of what the Second Amendment would mean, because they'd watched what happened in Haiti with Louverture and Jean-Jacques Dessalines.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah, man.
They actually prayed to the devil to get themselves free. Pat Robertson talks about that. They actually prayed to the devil to become free.
Who did? The Black Panthers?
No, the Haitians.
Oh
no! You're absolutely right. Yeah, that history is extreme. Guys, for years, I had Danny Glover. Little side note: Danny Glover has been trying to make a Toussaint Louverture movie. Okay, Hollywood won't let him do it, and it's funny because you got Oprah, you got Will Smith, you got Tyler Perry. None of them will cooperate with Danny Glover on this, right?
Wow.
But the history of the Haitian Revolution is extremely fascinating, and it also gives you some indication of why Haiti is still an international pariah to this day. Mind you, Dessalines, the army commanded by Dessalines and Louverture, defeated Napoleon's army in Haiti. Okay, that was a French colony, and it was brutal when they started that thing off. Man, they were chopping up men, women, and children. and feeding them to the pigs. Okay, it was brutal, and it sent the shockwave through France. And Napoleon, by and by, they gave them their freedom and backed away from the island.
Yeah.
And now Louverture did die in captivity. The French did capture him and take him back. But yeah, that history is, and mind you, these Democrats over here that were the slavehold, they were understanding exactly what was going on with that. Okay. And Kung Fu CJ is right. There was a lot of petitioning of darker forces. A lot of voodoo came into play with all that. It is a fascinating history.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So again, but the history, was one thing looking at the museums and the Smithsonian to tell the truth, right? To display accurate history, in all its forms, right? Versus creating a narrative, right? And especially when it comes to Black history, people don't talk about, those that expanded the American ideal westward, like Harry Hoosier, right? He was an evangelist that, was preaching, going towards the West, Indiana, going westward, Northwest of America, central Midwest. But we don't talk about Harry Hoosier, right? We want to talk about some, lesbian that had one leg or something. And I'm not trying to disparage any amputees or anybody like that, your sexuality, but they're propping up these elements of history that are less relevant, let's say.
So we don't want any letters from the lesbian amputee community.
Right. We don't. And then why not talk about someone like John Morant? John Morant was a young man that was born in New York and moved to Georgia. And this was during the period of slavery, and became one of the most well-known musicians in Georgia at the age of 13. They don't talk about that type of those type of pioneers in the American ideal. And he was the first minister that successfully ministered to the Indians. And if you know anything about the Indians were vicious in their tribe. And he met a young Indian boy while he was out. The young Indian boy was out on the hunt, right? They go out and hunt food and then bring it back to the tribe. And when he met that, John Morant, the young Indian said, "Hey, I want to bring you back," because John Morant ministered to the young Indian. John knew the story of the Indians and knew how they treated outsiders. And it's a crazy true story. And John Morant wrote about it. A young Black boy in the slavery era in Georgia wrote about this, but we won't talk about that in American history, Black history, or anything like that. What's up, Kung Fu?
You want to know what else they don't want to talk about?
What's that?
I know exactly what you're going to say.
They don't want to talk about Anthony Johnson in Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to talk about the Blacks in Louisiana that owned slaves, or in South Carolina that owned slaves. They don't want to talk about the over 2,000 Blacks that fought for the Confederacy. They don't want to talk about that. Once I bring that up, the conversation goes left. I'm all kinds of everything underneath the sun.
Yep.
And the reason why is because it messes with their narrative. It messes with their, okay, I said this, I said that. Okay, he coming back with this, that, and the third. Ain't nobody tell me about this.
Right.
And the reason why is because the school don't want to tell you. I posted on my Facebook page a lot of stuff about, like I posted about Carver, the creator of the Peanut.
Mm-hmm.
And when they asked him, how did you learn how to do all this from the peanut? He said, the Bible taught. He said, what? I said, yeah, I was reading the Bible. I said, Lord, help me to understand. And basically, everything that came from the peanut that he invented, he said he attributed to God and the Bible. They don't want to talk about that.
So now the big question is, what started all this, right? What happened? What caused this? Now, I mean, I don't have this in my notes here, but when it came to you referenced education just a moment ago. Anybody heard of like Darwinism and Charles Darwin's theory? The whole theory of evolution.
Mm-hmm.
That was placed fundamentally in the school curriculums. And what that fundamentally says is that there are classes of people that are better suited for education, and it presents Black Americans or Black people as a whole as inferior, right? So this is the spirit behind the education system in America, right? Once Darwinism, the theory of evolution, and all that was kind of infiltrated as an undertone of the education system, that's what really started producing this kind of narrative that Blacks are inferior. Now, this happened around the 1920s, that era back there. Also, during the 1920s, the communists were beginning to make their influence. Now, this right here is my go-to when I talk about running the play of the communists. Manning Johnson, who was being trained up in the Communist Party, realized, and he got really high up in the Communist Party, realized that the communists are no good for the Black Americans. But they used Blacks, right, to sow these seeds of division, because that's what communism needs for control. So, so again, if you do the download, if you do the download, guys, I have all this stuff linked. It's in the show notes, and you can look this up for yourself. Again, you don't have to believe me, Tyrone, Kung Fu, anybody on here. I'm just showing you some things that I found that help me see things a little bit differently. But right here, the color communism, common sense is probably I would suggest a must read for anyone looking into politics, going into politics, what have you, because this right here to me showed how Blacks in particular are being used to push an agenda. And now the race hustlers, anyone that leads with, well, I'm Black, or well, I'm disabled, or well, I'm gay, what have you, are just running the play of the communist platform. At this point, they're just running the play, right? Now, within this book, chapter 6 talks about the real Uncle Joms. And the reason I put this in here is because it's funny, because even after, because again, they try to do this kind of mental control, essentially trying to, that whole idea of intersectionality, right? You're going to start competing of which intersection matters the most. And they saw this happen earlier. It says, ironically, after more than 3 decades, the Reds came to eliminate race prejudice from their own ranks. Articles clearly show that the centuries-old racial, national, social, economic, and political difference vary between peoples, plagues and bedeviled the communist vanguard despite indoctrination, training, discipline, and so forth. The human element resists the red straitjacket. To me, at least what I gather from this is that as much as they continue to try this program of who's the most oppressed, who's the most, what class of people deserves the most handouts or the less handouts? Even as they go up the ranks and understand what the play is, they still can't get over this divide. What's your thoughts on this, the soldiers?
No, you're absolutely right, and I've said it before that I think the game to pick these symbols, they've got the game down to a science. Okay, so they know that, like, lots of people have said to me, "Oh, you should run for office," and I tell them, whatever I ran for, I'd be a one-termer because I wouldn't get any money, especially the second time around, because the big donors wouldn't do it. The things that I would champion would be really antithetical to a political career here in Maryland, especially. And so the other thing I try to tell people is, as far as politics is concerned, okay, you get Congress, whoop-de-doo. Now you go and become a part of a body of, roughly 500 people, and you sitting on the back bench for the first 2 years, and then you got to run re-election again. So they pick folk like Jasmine Crockett. And she'll tell you this. She'll tell you they tapped her on the shoulder because she was a state representative down in Texas, and she has said, and then they told me it was a good idea to run for Congress. All right. And they're not going to tell you that unless they have an apparatus that they're willing to put behind you. All right.
Yep.
The other thing they told Jasmine Crockett was, hey, go out there and play a step and fetch it, ghetto bird. And, because they need that. Maxine Waters is getting a little long in the tooth. They need another one. Yep. But it's not working as well this time. And she's going to lose her seat. Right. The Democrats are in absolute disarray. But no, I agree with you here that if you look at Jasmine Crockett, Wes Moore, Brandon Johnson over in Chicago, the one that said, I'm going to try to get up off of this plantation, they sent the dogs after him and they cut his foot off. And that was Adams. Okay.
Yeah, that was Eric Adams. Eric Adams. So, but here, I think this is key, man. Like I've come to the realization you have to use the Socratic method in understanding, right? Because a couple of episodes we said you can't tell the truth, right? It's something that you have to see, right? And I think Jesus's method, they call it the Socratic method, but Jesus did the same thing when he was talking about either telling the parable so you can see the connection, or he would ask questions, right, to get you to kind of think for yourself. When the answers are always given to you, right, it doesn't, you don't think about it. You can't see it. It's not true. Like, I can tell you Jesus loves you, but until you believe it or see it for yourself, it doesn't make sense. Right. So we have to ask questions in order to get to see these things, because when you start to evaluate, examine, and understand what's going on up in here, that's when you can start to see these things. So I started when I started my journey, I was like, what do Democrats really believe? What is the history of the Democrat Party? Who is influencing it? What is communism? How does that play? And just starting to ask questions, you just run across things when you open your mind, stuff starts coming to you. And there was a film on Amazon Prime. It was called Anarchy USA. It's in black and white. That's where I came across Manning Johnson. That's where I heard about the communist defectors and like the Communist Party, and then particularly going after blacks. Right, because on this journey, I was like, man, like black people aren't oppressed, right? I believe black people aren't oppressed. However, there are people using black people to achieve an objective, right? So I can't ignore that and just say, black people aren't targets, because black people are. But the playbook and the play was written out easy to see, easy to recognize if we look for it. Right. So I'm gonna keep going, right? Because the real Uncle Tom's, and this was just chapter 6. So this book, Color, Communism, Common Sense, is really, really, really a short book. You can probably read it within an hour and a half. It's 10 chapters. And the link that I posted in this actually goes to the archive web version link. I don't know what happened to the old site, but it's not up anymore. But it's you go on the web archive, you can find anything. Just a little tech tip right there. But within this book, Manning Johnson places a lot of references, a lot of graphics, and again, you can go back to he actually he puts the source material in his writing. So one thing that I challenge and encourage everyone to do when you have a question, go back to original sources. I'm not an expert in journalism, but one thing I know, if I go back and read what it originally said, that's that's the best you can get. All right. But in the book, he referenced another book called Reds in America. And this, again, is on the Internet Archive. So there's a book called Reds in America, and there's something in here called the Negro Program, in which the communists were going after, the blacks. And I'm gonna go through and just tell me if any of these things sound familiar. Nuclei shall establish all existing Negro organizations, such as fraternal, religious, and labor organizations, cooperatives, tenant farmer leagues, etc. NAACP. Think about these organizations that have been found. They also intentionally attack the church. Number 2, colored organizers and speakers shall be sent among Negroes in order to inform them and win their confidence. Think about the black people that they prop up nowadays. Newspapers and publications shall be established, or when this is not feasible, news service shall be established by friendly cooperation with colored newspapers of liberal tendency. Now, fun fact. The Afro newspaper, started in Baltimore, Maryland, was a result of the Communist Party. That was the black newspaper outlet for the Communist Party. The Afro-American newspaper started right here in Baltimore City, Maryland. Guys, this stuff isn't it's not that far off, guys.
I have a friend who used to write for the Afro.
Friendship of liberal-minded Negro ministers shall be sought, as these men are at the present time leaders of Negro masses, and many of them are earnest but lack specific or scientific knowledge.
Yeah, Margaret Sanger used that to great effect.
And I think of people like Brandon Scott, mayor of Baltimore. He is being groomed in this stuff.
Yep.
He is the perfect mold to fit the communist plan. Conference on economic conditions among Negroes shall be held from time to time with these ministers, education, and other liberal elements. And through their influence, the party shall aim to secure a more favorable hearing before the Negro masses. Think about all the conferences, all the things that say, well, in order for blacks to start business, you need more government resources. You need more handouts. I mean, just go through this, right? By means of its membership, the party shall penetrate the existing forms, literary societies, what was that, lyceums? Licking, I don't know that word. Schools. I mean, I need to go back to school. Colleges, teachers, institutes, etc., of the colored people, and establish forums of its own for the enlightenment of the Negro population. Guys, it's right here. Like, all this stuff is right here written out. What's up, soldiers?
No, go Kung Fu.
Oh, Kung Fu.
Listen, if you can, I don't know if you read any of Thomas Sowell's writings, but black redneck and white liberals.
Yep.
is an awesome book.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Another person, Walter Williams,
Yes.
who is a student of Thomas Sowell. They're both economists. This is stuff that my uncle would just throw on my bed, you know, me coming home from school. What is this? And tell me, read some of it.
Yeah.
You know, when I joined the military, I was already a Rush baby from listening to Rush Limbaugh.
And Walter Williams, not to cut you off, Kung Fu CJ, but Walter Williams was one of my two favorite guest hosts, Mark Stein being the other one.
When they would come on, Thomas Sowell was a communist. He was a communist, and then he worked for the government, and that changed his mind. After working for the government, he was like, you know what? This is not going to work.
You're right.
It's like the guy, Glenn Lowry. You guys familiar with Glenn Lowry?
Yeah, that's the name I was trying to think about the other day. Glenn Lowry. Because I was talking to my wife, and we were talking about Dave Ramsey. I'm like, what's the black dude? What's the black dude?
Glenn Lowry. He's an economist, and it's like when you really take that discipline seriously and just say, I'm going to go with the facts. Okay. Now, they might be uncomfortable facts. And earlier, Logic, you talked about what was that defining moment that kind of made you see the light on conservatism. And for me, it was a program called Move to Opportunity. This was a Maryland welfare program back in the 90s, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm getting up. I'm getting up at 5:30 in the morning, getting out of the house. I had 3 jobs at the time. I worked for Verizon from 9 to 5, Sears from 6 to 10. And on weekends, I worked Radio Shack open to close. Okay. I did that for 3 years. Okay. And meanwhile, I had this neighbor. I lived on the 2nd floor. She lived on the 3rd floor. Y'all all know 3rd floor is more expensive than 2nd floor, right?
Yep.
She never left. In fact, I had to talk to her because we had these laminate floors, right? We didn't have carpet. And she would stay up all night walking around. And I went to her one day. I said, Judy, listen, I got to get up really early. If you would, please, can you kind of quiet down? And she was like, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, absolutely. And she did. Okay. But in talking to her, I learned she was on the Move to Opportunity program. She was living better than me in a better apartment. Okay. Here I am working 3 jobs. Okay. And nice lady, great person. Right. My beef wasn't with her. My beef was with the system.
Right.
Okay. And I also saw when I moved out, I moved to a better apartment complex. And I knew then, oh, they got Judy trapped. They got her trapped. She can't get out. This is the best, unless she changes her mindset. Right. This is as good as it gets. Okay. Right. And so then I started like, wait a minute now. Why am I a Democrat? And the answer was because your grandparents are.
Yep.
And that wasn't good enough for me. Okay. And when I start interpreting that paycheck and figuring out FICA and all these deductions and I got paid and what I got, man, I tell people today, I make Ronald Reagan look like Alec Baldwin. I'm so damn conservative. Okay.
Wow. So again, this stuff is not hard to be seen, right? But it does take that person willing to look for it, right? I'm gonna read number 8. I'm gonna skip 7 because it's But read number 8. The party shall penetrate existing anti-Ku Klux Klan organizations, shall form organization wherever none exists. As this is one of the most violent forms of suppression of the Negro at the present time, the formation of such anti-Ku Klux Klan organizations shall be fostered with all energy. So they provided the enemy and created a solution for the enemy. Guys, again, we should be at a point where we're thanking Trump for what he's doing, especially looking at this revisionist history that has been essentially forced down the throats of Americans. When you go to a museum, who's looking to see how bad America is?
Right.
There you go. There you go.
When you go to, when you're looking back, you want to see what we've been through, but also in the terms of this is what we've overcome, right? Not what's currently going on. And ultimately, guys, this is really a distraction from this right here, right? Because if we looked at history and saw who is really trying to divide Americans, what the objective is to divide us as a country, I think we would be more unified, right? They say that it takes a big event for things to, for us to kind of come back together, right? And that, that's why 9/11, had that kind of unification element to it for some time. That's long worn off now, but after 9/11, you notice like America was like, you don't come against our country. Mm-hmm. The communist influence at this point is so deep and so strong, right, that we're not seeing it as an enemy like we should be seeing it, right? You got illegals coming over across the border. When you and just today, there was a Russian Uber driver who attacked the CEO of a company because there's an altercation, but this guy came in illegally. These are things that are happening in the country right now, but because we're so focused on these things that divide us, we're not looking at what the source of this division is.
Right. You're absolutely right.
It's communism. I mean, to me, it's communism. And what made me kind of come to this conclusion, I like to joke around, I like to have fun and everything, but I have been warning everybody and telling everybody to look at this book, Color, Communism, Common Sense, for the past 5 years, because everything is in there. And also, the communists have a list of goals, and I actually had made this a while ago for the Lady Show, Pop and Politics. And when you go through these things, this is from 1963, this was read into the Congressional Record. You see all these things happening today, right? Hold on. There's a couple of them that's just so poignant, right? So resist any attempt to outlaw the Communist Party. When you look at the Democrat Socialists of America, what are they? They are the Communist Party.
That's it.
Russia access to the U.S. Patent Office. Capture one or both of the political parties. And I do believe there is a uniparty. There is a uniparty out there. It is what it is. Technical decisions of the court to weaken American institutions by claiming their activities violate civil rights. I mean, guys, come on, man. Look at us.
See it in the streets.
This is the biggest one. Get control of the schools. Use them as transmission belts for socialism and current communist propaganda. Soften the curriculum. They say all the time, blacks can't do math. Soften the curriculum. And just last year, was it last year or the year before, the state of Maryland lowered its graduation standards, right? So they used to have 3 metrics. You have to, take the SAT, pass, meet the standard on, English and writing. Now you just take the test. It doesn't matter if you pass or fail. You can still graduate. Get control of the teachers associations. Now the teacher unions, if that's not what the teachers union, that's already under control. And then put party line in textbooks. Who's promoting this gender ideology stuff?
There you go.
Who's promoting? If you go just in Baltimore, they had the young man who's a graduate who graduated, and he's going into the military, and he spoke up and said American flags should be in every classroom, but we have these what do you call the LGBT flags in every classroom, and he spoke up about it. They expelled the boy.
That's right. They hate patriotism.
Look at these guys. Gain control of all student newspapers. Use student riots to format public protest. This is why Trump is going after those college campuses. When you look at this and what's going on in the college, guys, these Palestinian protests, look at this, guys.
Yeah.
Infiltrate the press. Get control of big review assignments, editorial writing, policy making positions. Gain control of key positions in radio, TV, and motion pictures. This is why independent media is so important.
And independent film.
Look at this.
Exactly. This is exactly what I was about to say. With the film industry, they adhere to this at the expense of their financial success. They don't even care if these movies are going to make money or be. You got all of the Marvel movies post Endgame are trash, but all of them also are embedded with leftist ideology.
Yep.
All of them. Star Trek destroyed. Star Wars destroyed. Disney bought Star Wars for billions of dollars and then promptly started to destroy the franchise by pushing woke ideology throughout the source material. Okay. And they don't care. They keep it's not like they made two films that were woke and said, oh, that didn't work for us. Let's change tactics here. They continue to churn out. Marvel too. This Fantastic Four trash.
Yeah.
Okay. What was the other one? They had a couple of other ones. Superman. Okay,
Yep.
Superman got his ass beat throughout this new movie. Right. No kryptonite needed. Okay.
No, I mean, look at this, man. It's just, but here's the thing, guys. The information is all here. Control the arts and directors of our museums. Our plan is to promote ugliness, repulsiveness, and meaningless art.
Look at that sculpture that they did up in Chicago. Was it Chicago? With
the MLK sculpture?
The MLK one, right.
Not that one. How about the overweight woman in New York?
Oh, yeah.
Even better example. Right. Right. Even better.
Eliminate all laws governing obscenity. Just think about OnlyFans.
Wow.
Think about Mamdani wanting to, and that he's not the only one that wants to make, they call it X work, legal.
Sex workers. Yep.
Right.
You want to make it legal.
Right.
Yeah, think about this. And guys, I'm just asking a question. What does all this mean? Break down cultural standards of morality by promoting pornography and obscenity in books, magazines, motion pictures, radio. They're doing this in the schools. When they have this book Flamer that's available in these libraries, what do you think they're doing? Present homosexuality, degeneracy, and promiscuity as normal, natural, healthy. Infiltrate the churches and replace revealed religion with social religion. Discredit the Bible and emphasize the need for intellectual maturity, which does not need a religious crutch. Yeah, this stuff is all here.
Listen, this is why you have so many churches that preach watered down sermons.
Absolutely.
They don't preach repentance. They don't preach about sin.
Right.
And they don't preach about, I mean, look at where we at. It's the end times. Everything we're seeing right now. If you read the Bible, read Matthew 24 and 25, and you read Revelation between 4 and 19. This stuff is happening. It's happening. And they're saying, well, we don't want you to go too deep in the Bible. We don't want them to get too sensationalized. No. He says he's coming. And these are the warning signs. And he's showing us his warning signs.
Yep. And that's why we're here, guys, because we want to encourage people to stand up. And one thing that I'm noticing from the things that are happening this week, right, is that when you stand for truth, the lie starts to crumble. No matter how long that lie tends to, or how big that lie is, or how socially accepted the lie is, when you stand for truth, the lie starts to crumble. Go ahead, Tyrone. Sorry about that.
No, I was just saying we're further down the road on a lot of this stuff than the Soviets were.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just does any of these resonate? Do any of these resonate? Discredit the American Constitution by calling it inadequate, old-fashioned, out of step with modern needs, a hindrance to cooperation between nations on a worldwide basis. Discredit the American thought. Does any of this resonate to what's going on right now?
Sure.
Belittle all forms of American culture and discourage the teaching of American history on the ground. It was only a minor part of the big picture. Give more emphasis to Russian history since the communists took over. Support any socialist movement to give centralized control over any part of the culture, education, social agencies, welfare programs, mental health clinics, etc.
Well, that's
everything sounds familiar. And think about it. This was in 1963. Madam O'Hara went to court about prayer in schools before then.
And the reason, guys, I believe Baltimore is America's first true communist city is because a lot of these came out of Baltimore. When you start seeing the seeds and start seeing the plants of a lot of these things in the communist platform, a lot of it came out of Baltimore. You talk about the newspaper, the Afro-American newspaper, prayer out of schools, discrediting religion, discrediting American founding. Did you know in Baltimore City, they made saying the Pledge of Allegiance optional? So much so that no one says the Pledge of Allegiance. In Baltimore City schools, these kids, you go to a Baltimore City school age child, and ask them to recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
They don't know it.
No, they don't know it. No. And this is why Trump is so reviled, because, you know, as several people in the comments are pointing out, the furtherance of this agenda has been also assisted by Republicans at times.
Yeah.
Okay. And you've got Trump, who is just not playing along with the game. And then it starts to make sense about Butler, PA starts to make sense. The golf course. And I maintain, everybody says, well, there would have been two instances of attempted, you know what? I say there have been three, because remember during the campaign, this story was in the news for maybe a day. The plane had a problem. And, you know, and I've never heard of that before. Okay, with Trump's plane. The plane had a problem, had to make an emergency landing. I'm like, oh, so that was the third attempt. Okay. Yeah, so it makes sense why. And look, you want to talk about divine intervention. You cannot tell me that Butler was not a televised act of divine intervention, because we're talking millimeters. We're talking, if this guy, if he was some guy who spoke just teleprompter, you know, he'd be out of here. If it wasn't for the fact that he's really extemporaneous and really doesn't stick to a script and turned around and pointed at the screen, he'd be out of here.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't think that it's a stretch to. It's fascinating. You go back and read about accounts of Washington and some of the founders and experiences they had with what they characterize as otherworldly forces or angelic forces. giving them some insight into what the nation could become. I do not believe it is beyond the realm of possibility for that to have been divine intervention. Butler,
You heard about the young lady that was arrested at the Capitol who threatened Trump on social media. She came from New York to DC.
Right.
Yes, and that was this week. That was this week.
It was this week. That's right. That's
I
right.
mean, it's the I've been paying attention to the communist stuff and the socialist stuff for a long time, and basically, I know socialism leads to communism. It leads to communism, and once it gets to communism, there's totalitarianism, and now you have a dictator who runs the whole world. And I just pray to God that I'm gone when he comes, because that will be the Antichrist.
You know, it's funny. I always tell folk, I say, you know, Trump, I voted for Trump 3 times. I'm very happy with what he's doing. But Trump is a speed bump. Trump is a speed bump. And that's all he is. He's doing, in my opinion, he's doing great. It's what I voted for. But after 2028, I believe it's going to be business as usual from a Republican or Democrat standpoint. Okay, you're never going to get another Trump. I was telling this in Kung Fu CJ, you might remember this. I believe it was day before yesterday, we were on the Soldier Finance live stream. And I was telling the account of when my brother and I went to my mother and said, we want Jerry curls because we want to be like Michael Jackson. And she explained to us that no, Michael Jackson is really the only one that can do that. Okay. Now others have tried, but now we look back on it and think Soul Glow. You know what I mean? But Trump's the only one that can do what he's doing. This is not duplicatable, because I don't even think anyone would have had the grit to go through all of what he's been through in the 4 years of the Biden presidency, and really in the first 4 years of his. I mean, this has been 8 years of hell. Okay.
Yeah.
I think he's the only one that has the grit to withstand something like that.
Man, I was trying to find this scene in The Art of the Surge. If you haven't watched, if you haven't seen that on Twitter or X, whatever it is, The Art of the Surge, it actually documents, that his campaign journey. But there was a scene in there where he was on his plane and he was just kind of flipping through a picture book. And you guys, again, left liberals, they want to paint a certain picture of history, of Trump, and we're seeing this in real time. This is why I don't. It's knowing what we see now. It's hard for me to believe anything that's promoted as popular history.
Right.
But he's showing this level of appreciation of where he is. I'm trying to find it, but it may have to wait till another time. But again, this stuff is important. This is why we have to bring back shame. This is why we have to encourage, particularly men, to stand up for truth, righteousness, not being afraid to speak out. It's because, again, when you start to speak the truth, the lies start to crumble. And we're starting to see that this week, but we have to continue to carry that torch. Just like as you had mentioned, if we don't, 2028, who's there, right? And we can't look to Trump as being the savior, right? We can't look at him as, that once he's gone, then nothing else, right? So we have to start remembering the American ideal. And I think Trump is setting it up so we can remember the American ideal. That's why doing what he's doing with these museums is so important. And this lady triggered me so much this week that we had to talk about this, because she's not a one-off. These racist white liberals are promoting and pushing up these blacks. You saw the communist plan. They're following the playbook of the communists, and they're constantly putting these people like Brandon Scott in Baltimore City, Wes Moore in Maryland, Brandon Johnson in Chicago, AOC, Jasmine Crockett. They're all being promoted by this white liberal progressive that cares nothing, one, about the country, and two, they're using blackface, black voices, black people to promote this agenda because it's easy to divide on race. And Tyrone, you and I were talking about why they attach themselves to race earlier, where like the LGBT or some of these other issues, they attach themselves because it's easy to make that distinction, white versus black, right? Guys, I want to get guys. I want you to share your thoughts in the chat. Karen Bass. Yeah, Karen Bass is a big one, right? She was a
She's the original.
She went over. Did she go to Cuba or something like that?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So guys, like this, they try to revise the history about communism. They're saying communism is a good thing, and if we really start to understand American history and really look at start with Black history. Don't just read what's in the textbooks, the Martin Luther King, the Malcolm X. No, you got to go deeper than that. Right. Start looking up John Morant. Start looking up Harry Hoosier. Start looking up Thomas Sowell, right? Yeah. Walter Williams. And Thomas Sowell is still alive to this day talking about this stuff. And when and Tyrone, I'm sorry, I'm rambling, but Tyrone, you make a good point. You constantly say this, is that a lot of people today believe the world started when they were born.
Yes, right? Yes.
And, that's why people are able to say, well, white people started slavery. Mm-hmm. White people invented slavery. How did you even get to that?
Not only that, I've often wondered. Now, remember, this was a slave trade. It was the Atlantic slave trade, not slave war. All right. The Dutch, long story short, the Dutch showed up in West Africa wanting to trade. The Africans said, we got this, we got that. And no, we got slaves, because they had been taking slaves in their own culture for generations. Okay. And so they said, okay, here's a market for it, because our tradition is every time we go out and defeat somebody, we take slaves.
Yep.
Okay. But that was expensive because they had to feed, clothe the slave, and all right. So, hey, we got slaves, and the trade began. This did not happen without the West Africans being complicit. Okay. And what did happen was, because of Christian guilt, the Dutch and the British and all these people, they had to figure out a way to resolve this in their minds. So they started to be very selective and take things in the Bible way out of context to say, okay, hey, this justifies it. Now, that was with regard to the westward facing aspect of the trade. Now, the eastern facing, nobody talks about this. Nobody talks about the West Africans trading with Arabia for slaves. And one of the reasons why they don't talk about it is because you don't find long-standing the descendants of Black slaves in Arabia. Why? And the reason you don't find that is because the males were made eunuchs and the females were genitally mutilated. Okay.
Don't go
So
through
if
that
you had westward facing trade.
Now, hold on. Let me ask this. Do you think they used an anesthetic?
No, they did not. They did not. And so you look at like Jamaica, you had indigenous populations that look a lot like the Native American. Good luck finding one in Jamaica because slaves procreated, okay? And were bred, okay? That was part of the commerce. It wasn't until 1808 that there was a law to stop importing slaves.
That's right.
But the practice continued. Yep. The history is so complex because we still had slavery, but we were sending the USS Constellation, which is docked right down near the Baltimore Harbor. We were sending that out to interdict illegal slave trade, but we still had it. We still practiced it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And this is what I encourage people to do. You got to get deep into the history and you got to go into it with the mindset of this ain't going to be pretty. And this is not going to be simple.
Yeah. Yeah. No, again, and this is why, again, we got to bring back shame. These blacks really need to to apologize to Trump because Trump is trying to show the real deal, right? Trying to show the real view of America. Some additional resources I definitely recommend are the Bartons, Dave and Tim Barton, with the Wall Builders. They have the largest collection of American like history documents and artifacts. If you haven't checked them out, that's another element that helped change my perspective, at least to ask more questions. Because my goal, I'm not trying to provide answers. I can't give you an answer, but I can say, hey, here's some questions I had. Here's some resources and things I found. Now, those people that think they know Black history, American history, like you're set in your ways, you're doomed, right? There's no helping you. This is for those people that are just curious. You might have a thought. Was slavery that bad? There are Library of Congress records, recordings of Black folks saying, I wish we were still enslaved.
That's right. That's right.
Library recording record, but you won't hear them in the museum because they want to say, well, we should be celebrating diversity and equity and LGBT and promoting promiscuity. No, let's look at the real history, good and bad. And the crazy part is all of this stuff is accessible and free.
Mm-hmm.
You go to the Library of Congress, you can hear it for yourself, right? You go back and look at some of these go back and look at old newspapers, right? That gives you a real perspective, not the socially digestible, socially accepted narrative, but go back and read what was going on at the time, right? The Black slaveholders y'all mentioned earlier.
Antoine Dubois is another.
You know, okay. But guys, like these, because there is a plot. Black people are being used. I will say that I'm gonna say that as a fact. Black people are being used to promote a communist narrative, but also Black people have been now conditioned to say communism, socialism, these things are good, right? But if we really start to evaluate, and this is the big push, why they don't like this, when you really start to evaluate, look at history and look at the exceptionalism of America, that communist narrative falls flat on its face. Black people need families. Americans need families. It is the first order of government. It is the strongest institution. It is the institution that built this country. And that's what will get us to the next level. All right, so guys, final thoughts, man. Soldiers, what you got, man?
All right, real quick. As an example of how susceptible to suggestion Blacks have become, liberal Blacks have become. You actually have some liberal Blacks in DC fighting for unsafe neighborhoods. Okay. Now, on Soldiers of Finance last week, we did a video that questioned or took a look at how the Democrats have made Washington, D.C. a sundown town. We actually have a woman, an older Black woman in the video who says, I'm afraid to come outside at night. I get everything. I get all my business taken care of before sundown. Okay. So if you're so inclined, check that video out on
you gotta check that out.
Finance channel.
So Kung Fu, man, thank you. Go ahead. My fault.
Real quick, let me just say this. I really, and I know I speak for all of us here when I say I really appreciate the chat and the participation of everyone, because what we try to do is get on here and bring an intellectual approach to the issues of the day. And it's just heartening to see that has traction with you good folks. So
right on. So on top of that, go ahead and share this, because this one is going to get us called an Uncle Tom. But I think I prepared us. I prepared everyone for that at the beginning of the video. You're going to be called an Uncle Tom, but remember, Uncle Tom's the hero. Kung Fu, man, what you got going on? Thank you for joining us. The Kung Fu CJ is Metro Conservative Media's super fan. And so what you got?
And one of Soldiers of Finances as well.
Yep.
all I want to do is reiterate what you guys were saying. David Barton, Bill Federer, also the American Minute. If you go to his website, he has a lot of histories as far as Black history. He also has a lot of history about Islam and how communism and in Islam are bedfellows. So thank you all for having me on, and I hope to be back soon.
Right on, man.
All right, guys.
All right, so guys, you've checked out what's Just the Guys podcast. Again, we go live on Saturdays at 6:30. If you missed the clip this week, I put out a clip on the Where's Ja, the Colin. So that was from last week's show. Colin Kaepernick showed up at a camp, not a campaign event, but it's an event for Asia Brave Boy, who is a county executive here in Maryland. But Colin Kaepernick came here and I guess had something to say about politics, but I also demonstrated how Maryland politicians have been taking advantage of Marylanders with the energy bills, the cost of property taxes in places like Baltimore City, and with this crime. And we talked about crime is not down. Again, these are the plants of communism, but go back and check out that clip. It's a really cool clip to check out, and more to come next week. Again, thank you guys for tuning in. And remember, we're here to bring back shame, and only monkeys litter. Y'all have a good night.
Good night.